Hey, Ace and Beaky here, and I just wanted to talk about how our relationship with Saudi Arabia and China has shown that a lot of the proposed morals by the bipartisan establishment is bunk. Now, I prefer not to get into... I talk about things that are related to politics, but I prefer not to get into something that sounds like I'm veering too much into a specific camp. So what I'm saying is actually just trying to approach it from a moralist perspective and exposing hypocrisy on both sides. First, I guess we should talk about how Saudi Arabia has shown both the hypocrisy of both the establishment Anita Sarkeesian type feminists and the warhawks on the right. Now, my issue isn't to attack feminists because they're feminists or liberal. I'm exposing hypocrisy of someone in a position of power. This isn't about attacking warhawks for being conservative. It's not even necessarily that they have a foreign policy that I disagree with. It's showing that it's bullshit. That whenever these people and these top echelons who could say that they're launching a crusade for your values, they're not launching a crusade for your values. They want you to launch a crusade for their profit while thinking that they're working for your values, you're working for their profit. It's been that way since medieval Europe and medieval China, that a lot of the morals that our elites pretend to have, it's a bridge between their amorality and the inconvenient idealism of the masses. Politicians have to play into the role, whether it's the divine mandate of heaven or fighting for democracy or whatever, because they have amoral and immoral aims, and our idealism as people is just too inconvenient for them, because nobody's going to agree to do these horrible things just if they knew all it was doing was making money for bankers and economic royalty. So the thing is, back on track, Saudi Arabia really shows the hypocrisy of a lot of the imperialistic Western, often Zionist powers. And don't get me wrong, on paper, I tend to favor Western civilization more. On paper, I tend to favor Western civilization more, but that doesn't mean that I have to favor foreign policy. That doesn't mean that I have to favor the power behind the throne. Right now, let's start with the warhawk right. Right now, the warhawk right is allied with Saudi Arabia, and they're tight with Saudi Arabia almost as much as they're tight with Israel. And the thing is that the warhawk right, look at all the reasons that they've said we need to go to war with the country or we need to start a coup in that country. And they'll be talking about how Venezuela is socialist and a dictatorship, and how we need to overthrow Assad because this or this country or Iran is technically a theocracy. Well, look at all these reasons. They're kind of all bullshit when you see how close we are to Saudi Arabia. There's really no excuse for it, because everything that we hold against all of these countries, you would have to put all of their bullshit together for it to be as bad as Saudi Arabia. But everybody keeps saying that it's like, oh, this is how we fight terrorism. No, it's not. It says, well, it's bad, but I'm glad it's not communist. Okay, conservatives, a lot of communism that you're afraid of is gone. Most people on the left, even if they're fucked up, even if I hate them, they want some form of like a mixture of socialism and capitalism. Okay? You can't just sit here and use communism as a boogeyman, because most people know that communism is dead. Just like with Nazism, minus small people who would try to influence people from the shadows to work to their benefit, straight up communism or straight up Nazism taking over the entire country is dead. They can exist as a terrorist group. They can exist as a terrorist group that might be tolerated by governments to take out people that the government doesn't like. But as far as it being taken over, stop using the threat of communism. Oh, well, this is, I'm just glad that we're capitalists and it's going to start. Look, dude, I'm not a communist. I'm not even that big of a socialist. But I'm not going to sit here and get caught up in a witch hunt mania because you guys want to talk about how bad communism is whenever it's really not that much of a threat. I like bringing it up to humble liberals whenever all they do is complain about religion or all they do is complain about the right wing. Yes, I bring that up to humble liberals, but I don't treat it like a boogeyman. I don't treat it like a boogeyman. I treat that there's some elements of Marxism that get into society, but I don't treat it like a boogeyman to control people with, as much as it is sometimes that if the left has been busting Christianity's balls a bit too much, then sometimes it's time to return the favor. But the thing is that I'm talking about foreign policy that, like, kills people. And the thing is that we're allied with Saudi Arabia. That should debunk a lot of our foreign policy stuff, and I'll explain why. Okay, a lot of the warhawks, they say that we have to start revolutions in Venezuela, and by revolution, they mean set up a right-wing dictatorship. And I don't hate it because it's right-wing, I hate it because it's a dictatorship. But they are funding rioters and terrorists and calling them protesters, but at the same time, whenever Native Americans are trying to stop their land from getting blown up by bad pipelines or turn it into Flint, Michigan, we rip them to shreds with dogs on Thanksgiving. So I don't want to hear that shit. The other shit that I don't want to hear is how Venezuela is bad because it's socialist. First of all, warhawks, Venezuela is not bad because it's socialist, and the thing is, if it was, why aren't we going to war with Sweden or Switzerland? Yeah, they're fairly capitalist in one way, but they're kind of socialist in another. And then Donald Trump is saying it to his fan base, we will never be a socialist country. Well, I'm not advocating for socialism in the least, but let's be honest. We already are a socialist country, and half of that socialism comes from the fucking so-called conservatives. The fucking so-called conservatives have always been for a form of socialism that gives them freedom, but not anybody else. So the thing is that a lot of them are saying that it's like, we'll never be socialism. We have socialism, dingbat. It's called socialism for the rich. It's corporate welfare. We have socialism. It wasn't the kind I asked for. You want to spend our tax dollars giving Israeli kids free college and health care or something like that. You want to spend tax dollars on militarizing the police into a standing army. You want to spend tax dollars into the military-industrial complex so that we can use big government to invade people's lives, which often funds people who kill Christians in the Middle East. You want to spend so much money in welfare for politicians and you spend so much in tax dollars to save corporations who have fucked up. So according to capitalism, it's a meritocracy. They should sink or swim based on their own merit. But whenever they fuck up, you want to spend our tax dollars to save their asses, because it's not about business. It's about establishing a neo-feudal aristocracy. So don't give me that shit that we need to invade or destroy a country because they're socialist. Don't give me that shit. One, we've got allies who are socialist, and two, we're just as socialist. We're just socialist in a different area. And half of that socialism comes from the so-called conservatives. They're not small government. They're not fiscally conservative. They're radical statists. Don't give me that. You want to call me a fucking liberal snowflake even after I grew up in the South and I've served in the military? No, bullshit. Stop that shit. You can't. What does conservative and liberal even mean anymore? It just means whatever you want it to mean, just so that you can be a dumbass and feel good about yourself and use it as an excuse to be ignorant of your place in the world. Don't give me that hot-blooded shit. It is not the 1980s. We are not going to save the day with capitalism and the Holy Spirit on our side, okay? Capitalism is not the second best thing since Jesus, and even though I strongly favor capitalism, what you have isn't capitalism, so stop with that talk like that capitalism is the only thing that's going to maintain society, because even if it was, you're very, very socialist, conservatives, and I don't want to fucking hear it. And another thing, you say that we have to invade Syria or Venezuela because they're dictatorships. Okay, well, they have elections in Venezuela. Part of the reason why things are fucked up over there is because we've been funding people to assassinate the government, or we've been trying to start a coup over there. So the things they say that it's a dictatorship over there, you mean like Saudi Arabia? You mean like a bunch of countries in our back pocket that you never hear about? That are like just tin can republics? Don't give me that. This isn't about protecting Western capitalist democracy from socialism. These people aren't a dictatorship, not as much as Saudi Arabia is. And you want to say Syria is a dictatorship. It was a secular dictatorship that protected Christians from the ISIS terrorists that you and Israel funded, that got a lot of their ideas from Saudi Arabia. Don't give me that crap that we're doing this to fight some kind of socialist dictatorship that's cruel to their people, because even if they are, there's so many of our allies who are 5 times as worse and we don't do anything to them. Syria was fucked up, but Syria was in the process of moving from a balkanized byproduct of colonialism to a secular Arab Renaissance. No, it wouldn't have been how I would have made it, and no, it was far from perfect, but they were trying to undo the shit that y'all had done. Also, another thing, you're trying to get on Iran's case for being a theocracy. Iran's fucked up, but Iran is not a Shiite Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a Saudi Arabia. Iran is fucked up, but we all know the reason why they're fucked up. We know why they're fucked up. It's your fault, America. It's your fault, Britain. They had a constitutional monarchy back in the 50s. It was a democracy. We overthrew that democracy and turned it into a dictatorship. They rightly rebelled against the dictatorship that we were torturing their people with. And then whenever that happened, and I think that we helped it happen, between the factions that were fighting against occupation, between the social liberals and the theocrats, I think that we funded the theocrats so that we could put people under a dictatorship. So I don't blame everything that happens with Iran on the Iranian people. Yeah, they have to take responsibility for some things, but America is its head is so up its own ass that it refuses to realize that what is wrong with Iran is something that we did. And even if they're wrong because of a reaction against what we did, we still did that thing. They wanted to be a crown jewel of the Middle East. If we allowed Iran's democracy to flourish, they would have been a good blocking point against both Salafist Wahhabism, and they would have been a good blocking point against communist Russia whenever it was a threat. So they would have been able to be a good counterbalance to both the Salafist, Islamofascist, theocratic medieval hell that was coming from Saudi Arabia, who was on the rise because we eliminated the competition and let them take over. And they would have been able to be a counterpoint, a defense against the Reds. But you don't really believe in democracy, America. You believe in fake democracy for your own people, and then putting people under a dictatorship that allows you to parasite off of their country and then calling it democracy. And a lot of well-meaning, good Americans, God bless them from here till next Wednesday. But a lot of Americans, they just don't know. There's no way that they can know because they're fed a bunch of lies by a bunch of controlled media that would make most dictators blush. The Middle East is fucked up, and a lot of countries are fucked up. But when you find out why they're fucked up, you realize that they're fucked up because of us half the time, or something we did made it worse. And I'm really getting tired of people not knowing this, because I've met some really good people in the army, some good people who want to serve their country, but it's time to wake up. It is time to wake up. It is time to realize that we've been duped. And it's time for you to realize that it's like, everything that the warhawks have said against Syria, against Venezuela, and against Iran, if you took all of that negative shit from each one and doubled it, you'd have Saudi Arabia. So I'm thinking of the Bible verse where Jesus says, pull the log out of your own eye before you remove the speck from somebody else's. Maybe they got more of a speck, maybe some have a twig, maybe some have a plank, but we will always have the huge ass log in our eyeball as long as we're friends with Saudi Arabia. Now, as with Saudi Arabia, as with the right, so with the left. As above, so below, I guess you could say. But as with the right, so with the left. The left has shown its hypocrisy, specifically the Anita Sarkeesian feminist cartel, which I think Anita Sarkeesian and her types are less about true social justice activism. They're not grassroots. They're establishment pretending to be grassroots. They're con artists. They are people who are very corporate and are basically everything liberals hate about ultra-capitalism, but, with liberal left-wing progressive makeup on. But she's a con artist, and I don't hate her because she's a feminist. Not at all. I hate her because she's a con artist. She's a con artist who hurts people, and she's for the establishment. She's a troublemaker. You know that she's in the establishment's back pocket whenever she's able to make all these promises, get all these people in trouble, and then go on vacations in France. Of course they're pampering her. She's an agent of these people. I don't know if she's straight up an agent of the government, but she's in the back pocket of somebody, and boy, are her pockets full from all this. It has nothing to do with the fact that she says that she's a feminist, okay? It's not about being a feminist. Being a true feminist, even if I disagree with some of their points, if their heart's in the right place, we may get in some fights, but we may at least agree on something. The thing is that Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn went to the UN to get Saudi Arabia on their side to crack down on sexual harassment of women and bullying online. Now, I understand that there's some fuckers on the internet, and we could all learn some fucking manners and be more compassionate and accommodating. And that there are some heartless bastards on the internet. And even though I don't want to stifle free speech, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, if these people learned a little bit of humility and compassion and got in trouble for taking it too far, it might do them good. It might do them good, because I've had to learn lessons. We've had to learn lessons. Some of these fuckers on the internet, yeah, it would be nice if they learned some goddamn manners, and that there are consequences for harassing people online. But not at the expense of the limitation of free speech. But even then, let's just forget that side about censorship versus harassment and all that. Look at the hypocrisy of it from an establishment angle. She went to the UN. Not only is the UN known for being part and parcel to a lot of vicious sex crimes against African women and children in the countries that they're occupying, yes, they do, and it's horrible. But the thing is that she, like Saudi Arabia, was on the council. Saudi Arabia. You don't go and try to ask help from Saudi Arabia, a place that will punish you for being raped, a place that said women aren't allowed to be outside without men, minus a couple recent reforms, that until recently said that women driving cars were terrorists, a country that if you say the wrong thing on the internet, you can be disappeared. Now, it's a place that has like maybe an economy or something where people can have a lot of fun, but it's still like a dictatorship, but it's like a dictatorship hiding behind a party for some people. And I don't hate the Saudis, and I don't want to be mean to the Saudis, but the thing is, Saudi Arabia was created by the British to help them control the Middle East when they quote-unquote left. Saudi Arabia said to this one priest, the Saudi royals basically said, hey, we're taking over this massive land, and we want to control people better. Can you create a version of Islam, mixing in a little bit of pre-Islamic paganism and Satanism, that will be like the most insane version of Islam, so that we can control our people and we can control them like it was ancient medieval times? And he said, yeah, sure, but this form of Islamofascism isn't going to exist on its own. Most Muslim countries, even if they're traditionalist and conservative by modern Western standards, most of these Muslims, they don't want that type of medieval tyranny. It's like, okay, well, we'll be funded by the West, because instead of the West funding a bunch of moderate countries that wanted to be a genuine democracy with maybe a little bit of socialism mixed in, they would rather fund a medieval Islamofascist hell. Because most Muslims were beyond that point. Most Muslims wanted to catch up with the times. And before America bombed Israel into existence, most Muslim countries actually had a lot of respect for America. And they wanted to catch up. A lot of Muslim countries want to be North European liberal style countries. Most Muslim countries wanted to be like their version of what America and Britain was, what Sweden and Switzerland was. They wanted that. But who funded the Wahhabists and the Salafists to take over? We did. We did, because we wanted their form of tyranny to be able to take over once the Reds lost ground. So the thing is that, people don't get a break. It's either communism or it's a fake version of medieval theocracy that wouldn't survive in modern times. Not even modern Middle Eastern times. They want to get with the times too. But it was kept alive by us. And now that place that makes it to where, until recently, and I think they're changing their shit because they know the world's looking at them. Until recently, women were terrorists for driving cars. Until recently, and I think some women are still getting beheaded or stoned, sometimes because they were raped. Anita Sarkeesian, you don't get help from those people to track down a bunch of jackasses on the internet who probably need a lesson in manners and maybe their little asses beat by their parents. I'm sorry, Anita. I mean, I know that there's some fucktards on the internet who took things way too far. I also know that you started it sometimes. But the thing is that even then, even if I took your side all the time on this, you don't go to the UN and you don't go to Saudi Arabia for help on this based on principle. Whatever inch you think you're giving them by having them help you out with this is a mile that they're going to use to oppress their own women. Saudi Arabia has old-fashioned slavery in it. Old-fashioned slavery, not human trafficking, which is horrible as it is, but old-fashioned slavery, Amadeus slavery. I mean, it's like they are committing genocide against the Yemenis people, and they are holding slave auctions, and you see a bunch of African people tied up in chains and ropes, naked, being sold to people to work in their houses, and if they mess up or if they fight back, they can get their asses fucking beat. It's old-fashioned slavery, people. That's old-fashioned slavery. It's not even new-fashioned slavery that's part of the criminal underworld, and they're involved in that too. But it's old-fashioned slavery. Like, in your face, straight up, read a history book or read a fantasy novel where they're depicting it with, like, the crude form with, like, chains and stuff. It's real. I'm sorry, Anita Sarkeesian. You don't go to these people to stand up for women's rights. Just like right-wingers. You don't ask these people to be your friends against the terrorists. Or you don't ask these people to be your friends, and then you go and attack somebody who's like guilty of 1/10 of what they do. Don't give me that shit. You are on the side of the birthplace of the Wahhabist Salafist bullshit that the ISIS terrorists stand for. Well, the ones that aren't Mossad and CIA agents. Yeah, I fucking said it, bastards. You fucking bastards. I said it. This video is getting a little long, and it seems that the sweet spot is at 11 minutes, and I'm already twice there. So the thing is that I summed up pretty much most of the basic talking points about how Saudi Arabia shows what's fucked up with both liberals and conservatives, at least in a nutshell. So I guess in the next video I'll talk about how China exposes a lot of the hypocrisy of both liberals and conservatives. Ace and Beaky, over and out for now.